Okay, here we go again. It's my third attempt. Yeah. So, hi, everybody. This is just a bit of an intro in terms of the academic study of religion. I'm just wanting to give you a bit of an overview of different theorists in this area, how it all sort of began, and different ideas that people have come up with in their study of religion, how they understood it. And just so you have a bit of an idea. It's not really a favorite topic of mine, but it is something I do need to kind of take you through. So I do find it a bit dry. And maybe you guys will too. But anyway, there you go. As a part of the academic game here, we have to sometimes go through some of this stuff. Okay. So how did things begin here? I mean, again, putting things in context, we take it for granted, but a lot of the whole academic enterprise is very much a Western development and a Western phenomena, in terms of the university systems we have and the courses and the programs and the various fields of study and the approaches taken largely have been derived from the Western tradition, i.e. the European tradition. Okay. And so in the study of religion as we have it today, it has its origins in the West, in Europe. And so how things began is largely in the 1500s, where Europeans began to be exposed to other religious traditions, but notably those of more primal indigenous people. Okay, often, they were called primal cultures, like the people in North and South America, Africa, Australia, the various tribes of people there. And that, of course, raised interest in the study of other traditions. It often was instigated by missionaries who went overseas to spread Christianity. But as a whole, though, of course, Europe, in seeking resources and whatnot, and the whole trading industry that was developed, they then, of course, spread throughout the world. And then we have the rise of what often is called colonialism. Okay. And so, of course, many going to India and the Far East, and all that takes place. So here with with encountering people, like especially in Africa, the Americas, Australia, people that were still hunter-gatherers, maybe living in small villages. They weren't, developed, so to speak, to use that kind of language, as they were in the West. And so this was seen as an opportunity to explore the very beginnings of religion and how maybe they evolved from people of those primal societies to the people of today. Okay. However, it was really quite universally assumed, with the idea that these more primitive people were of lower intelligence, that they were lower in the evolutionary scale, right? This was very much the sentiment in the beginning. And so here are some key ideas or theorists, and Stark in his book, he does go through some of these people here, the different theories. And the first one is called naturism, in terms of a school of thought that develops at this time. And a key figure here is that of Max Mueller. He was very famous at the time, often seen as being, as I say here, the father of the academic study of religion. Okay, Max Mueller. He's the one that was responsible for translating a lot of the Upanishads, so those are important scriptures in Hinduism, and a collection of volumes, the sacred books of the East. So for the very first time, people were being exposed to Eastern traditions here as a result of this. And he came up with the theory of naturism, where he held that all religions really have their origins. What brings them into being, right? The reason why religions exist is because people in the past were just simply in awe over nature and the power in nature. They thought, what is this mysterious power in the sun and the moon and the rain, the various forces of nature, even objects of nature. They then personified them as though they're living beings, and then created the idea that these are all gods with these superpowers, right? So we get this whole idea of the personification of nature, which is indeed an element when you look at the history of religion. But he held this herein lies the origins of religion, is simply out of ignorance. The people were in awe over these powers. They didn't understand these powers, in terms of science and how things work scientifically, that then they developed then all these beliefs and ideas about gods and the stories about the gods. And that's what the myths are. Okay. So anyways, so he then kind of tweaked it all a bit as well, in that a lot of these stories, and especially looking at the Greeks, the classics of the Greeks, that he basically deemed it a type of disease of language, and that the stories about the gods were actually created around the names that they had come up with for these natural forces that they then personified, right? And then kind of made up stories about them in some way that's tied in with the names. Okay, so that really people just kind of created these stories in a way that was reflecting the language of the time, all right, for the various forces of nature. That was sort of his idea. Well, it didn't really hold up over time. It was very much criticized as really not having any substantial data to support it. Okay, it was just more a conjecture. And in fact, many studies started to indicate that primal societies really showed little interest in nature itself in terms of just the mundane regularities on a daily basis, that there was more involved. And again, I'm not, whoops, hang on here. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, kind of hard for me to control the slides on this. Okay, anyway, so that's just a little bit of on Max Mueller. Then the next key figure, though, that had more impact here was Sir Edward Burnett Tyler, who actually did some research and went and studied the Mayan monastic ruins in Mexico, and then published a 2-volume work called Primitive Society in 1871. Okay, and again, Stark talks about him in the text. And he came up with a theory that's known as animism. And it consists of the belief that because the ancients, people in the past, believed that all of life was alive, that all of nature was a living being, that everything inhabited a kind of spirit and intelligence and aliveness in it, that there was no such thing as dead matter or dead objects or dead nature. Okay, everything was alive. The trees were alive, the plants were alive, the stones were alive. Everything could speak to you, had an intelligence within it. Okay, and so from that idea that everything being animated, all right, that's what animism refers to, the idea that everything is alive, all right, that he held herein lies the origins of religion. Okay, that the primitive people were incapable of understanding that there could be a causation happening purely in material terms without an intelligence, i.e. a spirit directing causation, right? That the rain falls simply because of natural forces, material forces at play, not because it's the work of the gods or some kind of intelligence behind it. Okay, that's sort of what's implied here with animism, and that people in the past projected the idea of an intelligence being the source of cause behind things, that there were no just material forces of nature or causes behind nature, right? That's sort of the key concept here. And from that, of course, developed all that beliefs about gods and spirits and whatnot. Now, Herbert Spencer, he very much supported Tyler's idea about animism, wrote many works on social cultural evolution. And here you can see these are sort of the early anthropologists, okay? Like Tyler, he held that indeed primitive religion was rather childlike and rooted in ignorance, that these people just didn't understand or have any knowledge of science, and there was no scientific explanation for how things worked, all right, in terms of the laws of physics, so to speak, right? And so he then fleshed it out a bit more and developed what's called the ghost theory. He added to animism the idea, in terms of trying to understand, where do our religious beliefs come from? He asked, why is it that people so believe in spirits? Where on earth did they get such an idea? And again, it's rooted in human ignorance, because people lacked an understanding of their own minds, and they were just really perplexed over the experience of dreaming about other people. Even the dead, you go to sleep and you see somebody walking around in your dream, or maybe your dead grandmother appears in your dream, and you think, aha, how did that happen? It must be because there's spirits out there, and these spirits spoke to me in my dreams, right? And that this is where the concept of a soul, a spirit, a ghost developed, and that we have a physical body, and then also usually invisible spirit or ghost of some kind that can show up once in a while to account for those kinds of experiences. Okay, so that's kind of what's meant by ghost theory. Now, W. Robertson Smith, um, he kind of, again, goes a bit further and develops the concept and belief or a particular theory known as totemism. And again, building on the previous work of Tyler as well, because Tyler also had written a book on totemism, Smith made it something central to his understanding of the beginnings of religion, the origins of religion, primal religion. Okay. And he published a book called The Religion of the Semites in 1889. And totemism is something that really started to hold more sway in this among sociologists, okay, especially, and we'll see with Durkheim. Totemism refers to the most primitive stage of, ancient societies deemed to be savage. Okay, this is kind of language that's used here, where it was believed back then that every group of people that were related, okay, a kinship group, a clan, many groups believed themselves to be physically connected in kinship, related to physically to some type of animal, all right? That then to them becomes very sacred and not to be harmed. Now, if you know anything about shamanism, this is kind of tied in with the idea in shamanism that you have a power animal. That power animal is also your guardian spirit. So as a group of people, you could be of the bear clan, that the bear spirit is the guardian over this group of people, these are all, who are all related to each other. Then you'll have another group, well, they're of the wolf clan, and the wolf is their guardian spirit, for example, okay? So it's like a type of tribal deity that was seen originally as a type of animal. And then we see that later on, indeed, a type of tribal deity is no longer seen as an animal, but as a type of god or guardian spirit in some kind of way. It's very common, okay? And then later on, they become like guardian angels, right? I mean, there's quite the evolution of this, as we'll talk about later in class. But this is the key idea, is that in ancient societies or primal societies, all right, that we have this evidence of totemism, this sense of being in relationship to a particular animal that's seen as and is worshipped as a type of deity, if you want to use the language that develops later on. But they deem to be very holy and sacred, and very specific rituals done in relationship to this particular animal, and then certain groups having particular type of festivities of eating that animal, but only in a very serious ritual under certain circumstances. Okay, that's kind of what's behind totemism. Now, Durkheim, that I just mentioned just briefly a few minutes ago, he very much builds on this, okay, Emil Durkheim, and he's often deemed to be the father of the sociology of religion. Okay, the other ones were more anthropologists, and here he is a sociologist. From here, Durkheim held that all religious rituals or rites constitute what they're really all about, okay? What basically in his mind, what all religion is about is society worshiping itself in order to sustain social solidarity, a sense of solid identity and commitment to each other as a group to ensure their survival, okay? And so the most primitive form of this collective self-worship is totemism. So because the people were identified with a particular totem animal and had, that they are related to, like this animal is our ancestor in a sense, and then they worship this animal, that he calls a type of self-worship, okay? I'm sure you guys get what I'm saying here, right? And so then he held through this is through religion, then, this is how a society establishes the authority to impose moral codes of conduct and values. This is what ensures social order in society, that people follow certain ethical guidelines to follow. And this will ensure the well-being and the ongoing survival of that group of people. Okay, so he sees religion as purely serving a social function here of sustaining social solidarity. That is simply a form of people worshiping their own ancestor in some way. Okay, and that's what it's all about. And this is the thing about Durkheim. He held, this is it, nothing more. This is what religion is all about. Ta-da. It's been explained, totally understood. Okay, that's a key idea. So his key book here is The Elementary Forms of Religious Life. Any kind of belief of a God, a transcendent God, he held doesn't come from people being in awe of nature, thinking that there must be some higher force behind nature. No, no, no. Instead, it comes from a sense of awe of the social group, the power of society. Okay. So that's the key distinctive here between him and the others. He shifts it from nature to society. He relied for his evidence, hopefully you guys don't hear that noise outside, on confused reports about the Aborigines. And he concluded, there is no reason not to extend the most general results of this research to other religions. We must presume that the same explanation is valid in principle for all peoples. Okay, I mean, that's pretty, grand statement to make, but that is what his focus was, of the study of the Aborigines of Australia. And he held that that just extends to all other religions in the past, and therefore the origins of religion, and therefore we've explained religion. I will be including a list of some extra videos for you guys to watch. That's what's there, just so you know. Now, where am I here? Let me I think I went too fast. Okay, there we go. This is really tricky. That goes, slides jump up. Okay. So the next key theorist who builds on some of all this is Sigmund Freud. He published the book Totem and Taboo in 1913, where he builds on this theory of totemism by adding his own theory of the Oedipus complex, okay, and yet not really having any data to back it up, all right? So with his study of the human consciousness, the subconscious, he then developed this idea. And that is that in earliest societies, people lived in small groups, just like animals, where one male was sort of like the alpha male, the head of the pack, and drove off young males in order to monopolize the women and have all the women for himself. Okay, that was sort of his idea. Looking at nature, looking at how animals, you always have sort of alpha males, if they be wild stallions or wolves or bulls or bears or what have you. This happens, right? So the young males then are overcome with lust for the women. And so they end up killing the father in order to have access to the women. And having killed the father, they then sacrifice the father and eat him in order to get his power. Then they possess the women, they get the women, but then they feel guilty for having done this. So they then continue to worship the father. Okay, this is the key idea that he developed. Okay, and so that was the theory that he held, that religion really has deeper subconscious roots within the psyche that's been played out over the biological kind of element of an alpha male dominating the pack, all right? That then gets internalized into the depths of the subconscious of people, that they then end up worshiping the totem like this, that actually reflected the guilt of having sacrificed and killed the father, the ancestor, and to eat him, get his power, and then possess the women. Okay. So that's a key idea that he develops. I just want to make sure I didn't skip a slide here. Okay, there we go. So that's all what Totem and Taboo, that first book, is about. Then he also adds to it another book called The Future of an Illusion. And here he adds into his theory with respect to the origins of religion, that religion basically reflects the human need, the psychological need for security in an insecure world. Okay, that it is a form of wish fulfillment, in that because we humans so want a big daddy up in the sky to tell us what's right and what's wrong, right? And we have that experience in our physical life in terms of the physical father as being the head of the family, basically decreeing what people can do, can't do, what's right, what's wrong, right? And providing that kind of security, provides the family for the family, protects the family, guides the family, sets the rules for the family. So we then project out into the universe a big daddy up in the sky who does the same thing, a big daddy in the sky who will protect us from harm, tell us what's right and wrong, what we should do, what we can't do, provide for us and help meet our needs. Okay, so it's all around a form of wish fulfillment. So this is how, so here now we're getting into the psychology of religion. So Freud kind of makes a transition from anthropology to psychology by bringing in certain theories here that religion has its roots in the subconscious of the human mind, all right, in terms of past event of slaying our ancestor and eating them and having sacrificial rituals to worship our ancestor, to the idea of wish fulfillment. Okay, hopefully that all makes sense for you guys. Okay, and I'm going to be putting some of those up on a separate folder. Now, here, Bronislaw Malinowski, this is still kind of more in the social sciences. He wrote an important work here, Magic, Science, and Religion in 1948. And he brings in a certain approach to the study of religion where he emphasizes, building on some of the previous ideas, that basically religion then functions to meet human needs. Okay, kind of Freud was initially pointing out that, yes, indeed, we humans have a need for security. We like to know that there's somebody out there who will protect me, guide me, provide for me, and tell me what's right and wrong and how I should live. That removes all this anxiety about, wow, how do I live? What's right and wrong? And oh my God, I could not have food tomorrow. I could die tomorrow. All these fears that we have, right? And so here he really highlights that religion functions to meet human needs, provides psychological protection against the fear of death, and gives people a sense of mastery over fate. Okay, and this is still very common. This idea out there amongst a lot of people is that that's basically what religion does. It's because people are afraid of dying. Ta-da! That's why they created this idea that there's an afterlife and that there's going to be a big daddy in the sky who's going to receive them with loving open arms someday, and you can just have peace now, knowing that your fate is secure. Okay. It's a very common belief amongst many people. So, functional definition of religion here is this. It focuses on what religion does, the effect people can have, the effect that religion can have on people, right? The impact it has on people, the impact it has on society, the role that religion plays in people's lives or in society. Okay, how it functions to maybe bring hope, bring meaning, moral code, social order, right? And therefore, it's held that this then can explain that religion has had a beneficial role in human survival. Okay, and this is very, very common approach and orientation among a lot of academics today still, is this kind of functional definition and approach. And that all may be valid. I mean, it does have its place. Religion does have an effect on people. Religion does indeed bring hope, meaning, moral codes and whatnot to people, right? It can provide, remove the fear of death and all those sorts of things. But is that the whole story? Is that alone the reason why religions exist? Because it's been able to fulfill these type of functions? That's the big question here. So anyways, I always jump ahead. The many functions of religion that indeed religion does and can provide psychological support, a sense of security in the face of uncertainties, coping with tragedy, coping with death, right? Coping with suffering and evil in life. Religion does indeed serve to define and reinforce social mores, laws, rules, social order, social cohesion. Indeed, religion does all these things. But isn't there more to religion than it's simply meeting some of these social and psychological needs? Aren't there other things that can do a similar thing? I mean, how on earth do atheists survive? How do they cope with facing these things? How does a society function at all, like in our secular society today? And we still instill laws and rules and have some sense of social order. So, these are big issues, right? Okay. So the issues with functionalism is why and how is it that many people have no need of religion? Okay, like I just mentioned here, right? Yeah, like you have atheists, they feel like they don't struggle with the fear of death. Societies function, without religion, etc. And then on the other hand, couldn't you say, isn't it true that some religious teachings, in fact, increase a fear of death, a fear of going to hell and that you're doomed or whatever, I mean, hey, religion can have a detrimental effect on a lot of people, okay? You'll have a lot of all kinds of things out there. So if religion is so central to effect social cohesion and moral order, why is society becoming less religious and more secular? Yeah, these days, that's all kind of big issues here. And then what about the various ways religion does not play a beneficial role, but is dysfunctional? Because indeed, you could come up with all kinds of stuff that religion is harmful. Oh, religion has been the source and cause of all hatred and conflict and war and destruction in the world and brought about a lack of individual responsibility. You always blame it on other people if something goes wrong. The devil made me do it. The problem is that the various roles religion can play is often used to explain away religion. Hence, religion exists simply because it can play a beneficial role in human survival. And that, again, this is just way too simplistic of approach, the functionalist approach. There are pros and cons to it. Okay, there's the other side of looking at this. Okay, there's, so many ways that religion has not been beneficial, you could point out. Okay, so it's just a convenient kind of theory that is seriously inadequate, I think. Anyway, the origins of religion. Many scholars have attempted to account for the existence of religion stemming from its ability to meet such needs. And this is how I would put this forth, is indeed these factors, the different role and function of religion to meet human needs, they indeed can shape and influence, right, how a religion shows up in somebody's life. How people, what they get out of religion, how religion is expressed. These functional factors of the various roles that religion can play, they shape and influence religion in some ways, okay, in various ways actually. But this is the key. They are not sufficient in and of themselves to be the primary cause or source for human religiosity, right? They're not enough. They're not sufficient in explaining the origins of religion. Where does religion even come from? Why does it even exist? The functionalist kind of approach and these other theories that we've just covered so far, they're not sufficient in giving an account, a solid enough evidence to account for the very origins and source of religion. Okay, I hope that kind of makes sense to you guys. Oops, where am I here? Central, and this is why I have the material that I do here in my other lecture. Central to what makes a religion religious, really, as I mentioned before, is the essence of the subject matter, the kind of stuff that religion deals with. Religion addresses a dimension of reality, a dimension of life, of human experience that we usually call the spiritual, okay, or what I've called the trans-empirical, that there indeed exists a, quote, something beyond the natural physical world that we call the supernatural, something of a non-material nature that's largely invisible and intangible to us, okay? That there's something more, this essence, that's just not being addressed here in these theories. And this is what leads to, in the study of religion in academia, they would call it the substantive definition of religion, because the other ones, they're functional. They are functionalist definitions in terms of defining religion in terms of the function it plays, the roles that it plays, that it has a role of meeting human needs, for example, okay? But here, a substantive definition is getting at the substance, the essence of religion. The idea that the essence behind religion is not just the different roles it might play in society, but instead here, it's what religion actually is, the substance of it. And that is truly the essence, which is the spiritual, that religion is about, and what it's saying and what people have experienced is there is more to reality than meets the eye, okay? That in human experience, you cannot just simply explain it away as, oh, it's something that meets people's needs. A need for order in society, that they follow various rules. If the police won't get you, God will. If you're a bad person and you don't get thrown in jail, you'll go to hell. Okay. And I mean, that's sort of the idea here, is that, oh no, we've got rules here that, even if you get away with a crime, God will get you, or karma will get you. There's going to be punishment for any evil that you do one way or another, right? There's social rules. And psychologically, to meet the need that, for dealing with the fear of death and all that kind of stuff. Okay. Here is holding like, no, those aren't enough to explain or to account for the whole history of the human religious experience. Okay. It just doesn't cut it. There's something more to religion than it just meeting psychological or social needs. You can't just simply explain it away as it simply being that. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, anyways, that's some stuff there. Now, I also include here some more contemporary theorists, because a lot of these ideas still continue on in various ways and just maybe modified a bit. So Alistair Hardy wrote a book, The Biology of God, and he wrote there that humans are like dogs in terms of loyal devotion to the head of the pack. Okay, so it's a bit of a tweak of this totemism idea. The same biological instinct of love, devotion, and loyalty is what drives and creates religion as a devotion to God or the gods. Okay, so you can, again, I just want to highlight just how things get tweaked a little bit in more contemporary writers. Julian James, he theorized that up until about 3,000 years ago, people heard voices, indicating that humans in the past, and this is his theory, that in the past, the people, whoops, let me just turn my phone off. People were pre-conscious and they lacked any concept of an I, that I am watching myself, or I am thinking for myself. I choose to do this. That sense of self-awareness, self-consciousness, okay, that just didn't exist. He assumed that they assumed that what was the left hemisphere issuing commands to the right hemisphere was actually the voice of God. Okay, a type of schizophrenia occurred, giving rise to religion. So he held that around 3,000 years ago, there was a major shift in consciousness. Okay, so that people went from pre-conscious to self-conscious. And what they didn't think, I'm not explaining this very well here. In the pre-conscious state of 3,000 years ago, people thought that when they are actually hearing themselves thinking, that it was, the voice of God speaking to them, or some other voice speaking to them. They didn't know it was their own thoughts, that themselves speaking to themselves in their mind. Okay, I don't know, hopefully that makes sense. Okay. And this is his theory in the book, The Origin of Consciousness and the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind. Now, again, people just come up with ideas, okay, trying to explain religion in some way, coming up with a natural explanation. So that's his idea. That really hasn't really carried much weight at all. Then, and a more recent one by Pascal Boyer is that in Religion Explained, he posits the agency theory, he calls it, where he held that we are just simply wired, biologically wired, to see meaning behind things, okay? A sense of agency, that if anything happens, there's a meaning behind it. And that this is because it has survival value. So for example, if you're going through the woods and a rock all of a sudden rolls down beside you somehow, right? That then could have a meaning, that there's a predator stalking you, right? And so for a survival instinct, you would look for something that would happen to assume it has a meaning behind it, that it happened for a reason. Okay, and we're biologically wired to look for meaning behind things, behind events that could just be random, but we impose and detect in it things of deeper meaning and purpose. So from a predator stalking me, this rock rolled down beside me, to the idea that, oh, wow, this was a miracle. This happened for a reason. The gods did this. The gods brought this about, okay? That it has a higher spiritual meaning behind things. So that's what he means by agency theory. And he held herein lies the origins of religion. Okay, we're always looking for meaning and we're creating meaning, and we've been wired to create that meaning behind things when actually there is no meaning. Okay, that's hopefully that makes sense. Oops, where am I here? Oops, where am I? Well, yeah. This just goes so lightly to touch. Okay, so the origins of religion, does it lie in simply social processes, the group transmission of beliefs for survival? Perhaps some aspects of a continuation does, but the very origins of religion, does it actually, can it be accounted for in these sorts of things? I tend to doubt it. Okay, because the origins of religion, in my opinion, lies in individual human experience. There's something more. There's something more to reality, something more to life. There's something more to me, something more to you. Okay? And in this regard, we see that the history of religions, in the history of religion, it emphasizes the role of founders, particular people who've had powerful experiences of that other dimension, that's something more. And they bring us their wisdom and insights from their direct experiences. That's why I so emphasize this experiential component in religion. I think it's extremely important. And there are those who would have agreed with me and have in the past. I mean, these are some of my teachers. And here, one of the most famous, very, very influential, but anyways, yeah, very important. He edited the Encyclopedia of Religion, which is a huge work. And he was one of the top scholars in the 20th century. He was the top scholar in the 20th century on religion, and probably top scholar in all of history up to this point, that's for sure, and probably ever will be, who knows. But this was a quote of his: a religious phenomena will only be recognized as such if it is grasped at its own level, on its own terms, if it's studied as something religious. That's only how you can actually understand it, if you actually allow it to speak for itself, right? To try to grasp the essence of such a phenomenon, the essence of religion, simply through biology or sociology or economics or linguistics or art or any other study is false. It misses the one unique, and this is the key, this is what I'm emphasizing, the one unique and irreducible element that's in it, the element of the sacred, the holy, the spiritual. Okay, what I'm calling the trans-empirical dimension, right? Because I'm just wanting people to get this, because so often they don't know what the word sacred really means, all right? But that's it. You've got to really zero in on the very essence of what religion is all about. It's not about all those other things. The biology, sociology, the linguistics, what have you, all those things, they can maybe shape it in certain ways, influences in certain aspects of it, but it's really missing that which is unique to religion, right? And it is that spiritual component that people experience at some level in some way. Okay, and so kind of a bit more in support of a more positive approach like this in the study of religion is Paul Radden, and he held, and he's, at that time he was one of the first to kind of speak against a lot of the early thinkers who believed that primitive man was, unintelligent and backwards and irrational and ignorant about things. He instead countered all of these modern biases by collecting data and evidence that people in primal societies were actually very intelligent, reflective, rational, and sophisticated in their thinking. And that in their camps, the gifted individuals were the ones who were religious formulators, the ones who gave birth to religions, all right? That it is not at all something, quote, primitive, so to speak. Okay. So anyways, I just want to, again, just introduce you to various people. So what we have then in terms of the situation these days, in terms of the approach to religion, there's basically three types of approaches. The history of religions, which is the camp that I'm in. which involves the study of its history, all right, the scriptures, the historical context, and we really, for me, and I really am in this camp, within this is the phenomenology of religion, really trying to get at the very essence of religion, comparing similarities, differences, attempting to understand it as an insider, all right, as a reality on its own terms, without this agenda of trying to explain it away, reducing it to some other factor, that religion is simply a byproduct of a biological need, for agency theory, right? Or of a survival instinct that, there could be some meaning behind that rock moving, or that reducing it to, some sociological factor, okay, that it's just simply a way of society maintaining social order, or a psychological factor, reducing a fear of death or having a big daddy in the sky to look after me type of idea. No, is not just about reducing it to some other factor. You are, I think, seriously distorting it, not at all understanding it on its own terms. It's, not giving it, credit where it's due. And I'm not explaining myself too well here, but I really think this is the key thing, and that's my approach. Then you've got the social scientific approaches, and they have their value, okay, but they focus on different aspects of religion. So in anthropology, they tend to focus more on pre-literary societies and their religions, often focusing on myth and ritual. Okay, that's kind of what they zero in is on. Tribal religious traditions, shamanism, things going way back in terms of, cave art and what have you. Sociology tends to focus on the structure of religion as a social institution. And here they tend to focus more in modern contexts. So most sociologists of religion focus more on modern society and the structure of religion in modern society. Anthropology mostly deals with pre-literary societies. Okay. And then psychology of religion, they focus more on individuals and their emotional experience, what it personally, how religion means to them as an individual and the effect it might have on them psychologically. Okay, those are sort of the social scientific approaches. Whoops. Then you have philosophy of religion, and there they tend to simply analyze religion in terms of reason and logic, evaluating any truth claims made. Is there evidence for the existence of God? What are the different theories regarding that? What about suffering and evil? How can you believe in a good God if there's evil in the world? Does it mean that God is not good and that's why there's evil? Or does it mean that God doesn't have enough power? He's not powerful enough to stop evil? Why does he allow evil if God is all good? So you get into all these sorts of debates about the goodness of God, the power of God in the face of the reality of evil in the world, right? And again, it's just, again, the rationalizations, arguments of logic and reason regarding religious beliefs, okay? Is there, evidence for a soul? What is the nature of it? The mind versus body, all that kind of stuff. And then you also have some other approaches, theological approaches to the study of religion. That involves when you are approaching the study of religion within a particular faith commitment, right? You're already committed to a certain religion. And so you're studying that religion and discussing it, presenting it in a way to support your own particular religion, to justify it or defend it. And then also often maybe to prove how other religions are wrong and false. Okay, so there's usually an agenda, right? You're committed to one religion and you're out to prove its rationality and justify it in the face of other religions, and maybe trying to prove how those guys are wrong and I'm right. Okay, that can happen within any religion, even though largely this language of theology is usually associated with Christianity, but you could have it happening in any religious tradition. And then what's happened in more recent times, we have feminist environmentalist approaches to religion, where they're exploring the role of religion in supporting women or not. So you'll have certain women or people who are committed to just zeroing in on the role of women in religion, all right, throughout time, throughout cultures, what have you. And then the same thing goes on with environmentalism, exploring the role of religion in either sustaining or harming the environment in one way or another. So these are more recent trends, the feminist and environmentalists, in terms of coming out of the 60s counterculture. okay, and all the social activism that happened in that time. And so that's kind of shown up in the study of religion as well, okay? All right. But one key thing that I think is really important is the insider versus outsider approach. Because there are challenges to both. There are challenges in the sense that if you're so objective, being an outsider to a religion, in the sense that, oh, it's this religion out there, I think it's weird, and like, it doesn't make any sense to me. I just don't get it. And if you always remain an outsider, being so objective, you often can fail to understand the deeper meanings of that religion, what it's really all about. Because we have all our own biases that blind us. We think, well, oh, those crazy people, they believe in this and that. That seems so stupid to me. I'm an outsider. I don't relate to it. It makes no sense to me. And, we have our own kind of biases and orientations that can hinder us from understanding people who are inside a particular religious tradition. Okay. Then on the other hand, as an insider, when you're totally in that religion, you can then lack objectivity and fail to see things that are obvious to an outsider. And you have another set of blinders, okay? Another set of being biased. So you can be either biased in various ways with your own filters, right? Things that just hinder you from really seeing things if you're either an outsider or a total insider. So it's ideally, you need to be a bit of both if you can, okay? We need to realize that nobody is ever totally objective. And can you actually ever truly understand religion as a whole if you are an atheist, skeptic, always an outsider? Do you think they can actually ever understand religion? No, not really. And don't you think it's very possible that if you're a total insider that you aren't biased, maybe to seeing things as an outsider? Of course, right? So you got to find a bit of a dance between these two, right? Is really, really key. So just keep that in mind, okay? And then also in terms of religious education, what's involved here? Religious education serves often to strengthen an individual's faith and commitment. So you'll have religious schools, you'll have things like Sunday school or religious schools of various kinds and religious institutions that do their teachings, okay? And which is great, whatever, right? But is there indoctrination going on here? Are you ever exposed to other ideas? Are you ever allowed to question anything? Okay. But then on the other hand, and this applies to anybody. It applies within religious education, outside of religious education, within this religion, within that religion. It's just things to keep in mind. Okay. And so whoever teaches, are they without prejudice and bias against other religions? Do they get the facts or do they get propaganda? Just to be aware, this is religion is a touchy topic. There are many approaches, many people, and just to be aware of these things. And to keep in mind that in religious studies, here, you're not teaching a religion. Okay, like, yes, we're pushing this religion or pushing that religion. No, but you're teaching about religion. And so here in this course and programs, the course I teach here, is we're asked to, really just bracket our own personal beliefs and biases to be both more objective and also to allow for becoming a bit of an insider as well, to try to see it from the inside, to try to see it from other people's perspectives, okay? So to do a bit of both. And that's a key thing. In religious studies, we're teaching about religion, whereas in religious education in schools, you're taught a religion. Okay, so I think I'm going to, let me just check here. Let me pause. I think I might be ending here. And okay, so just to wrap up here, a couple of points. So keep in mind how universal religion is, okay? It is universal. And I don't think it's just rooted in some childlike fear of nature, of storms, the dark, the death, sickness, the unknown. I mean, yes, we all have those kind of fears. That's quite normal, but it's not just about that. Rather, it's really about acquiring practical success in a hunt, how to know the best way to grow food. It's under a full moon that you plant the seed or not, how to overcome illness and bring about healing, how to deal with aggressive neighboring tribes and have a safe journey, right? And people then would call upon higher powers in assisting them to be more successful in life in its various ways. to overcome the limitations that we can have as humans by getting aid, receiving aid from higher forces and beings, okay, what we call the supernatural. That's a lot of what's going on here in the history of religion. And indeed, it is a big topic, a complex topic. But what's so interesting about religion is how it shows up in every aspect of human existence. Something we in our secular society today, we fail to realize, right? So there are many ways of studying religion. You can study in terms of psychology, but also history. It shows up in history. It shows up in, of course, social institutions and anthropology, but also in terms of literature, religious art, religious architecture, archaeological finds dealing with religion. It shows up in international relations and politics, philosophy, the history of ideas. Religion is embedded throughout every aspect of human experience. Okay, so it's really huge. And again, I hold that the origins of it lies in human experience. And we will be looking at some of these things in terms of the earliest forms of it, in terms of cave art in prehistoric times, and the parallels with shamanic induced experiences by, taking certain plant substances like ayahuasca and whatnot, right? And how that shows up in art. And we'll see from here on how religion evolves. Okay, so it's very much a very interesting topic, very important, universal, complex, huge topic. And so we're just going to be exploring some of these things. All right. Okay, that's that for now. Ciao.